Mom. Yeah, you was like, Ebony, that's not gonna work. And I was just like, but yeah, it's gonna work fine. And you were just like, Ebony, no. So that's when at that time I was already talking with a realtor because I was only 21 when we bought our first house together. Yeah. But when I was 18, I had my own apartment and I was looking to purchase another property. And the real estate agent that I was working with at that time, the transaction ended up falling through. But once I came to you and I was like, look, I'm about to buy a house. Like, I'm about to move forward. And you were like, buy a house? Like, where? And I was just like, look, I got this realtor. And immediately you were kind of like, well, why don't we just buy a house together? And at that time, it was the same thing. Like, wait a minute, Jerome. Like, I buy a house together. Like, wait a minute. I know that we said we were dating now because we were friends for so long. So it's like that transition from being just friends to going over to dating seemed like it was so seamless. But it seemed like every second of it, I was trying to like pump the brakes a little bit. Like, wait a minute. I know we were friends and now we said we were going to be dating, but now you saying that the house that I'm trying to possibly buy, you want to know if we can just buy it together. So then you said, well, have the realtor come over and meet with us. So that's basically what she did. I remember she came over to your place and we sat around the kitchen table and she kind of introduced herself to you and so forth. And I didn't specifically have a home picked out yet. I had just kind of started the process from previously when I was going to purchase at 18 and that transaction that fell through. She was really good and worked with me and was very knowledgeable and so forth. So I decided to obviously give her a call back. So I'm not sure if you remember, what you probably do. Once she met with us that evening, you were basically like, oh yeah, let's move forward then. Let's buy a house together. Mm-hmm. And I was still like, this guy is lying because I was just so used to like, I'm from Baltimore. Even though you had traveled the world and you're from Baltimore as well, at that point I felt like, look, I never went outside of the country at 16. Everybody I know lies, steals, cheats, all of that. I don't know good people here. Like I know a small amount of people that, mean well. Most of the time in my experience, and it's just really sad to say that mindset, and a lot of people in our town still has that mindset. But I used to literally feel like, I don't believe a word this guy is saying out of his mouth. And anytime that I'm asked, like, what makes Jerome different? And I'm just like, things were just different from the beginning. I can tell like a billion stories on what sets you aside from everybody else because even at that time, I was just like, this guy is not about to buy a house with me. I'm about to call this realtor on the side and do my own thing because he is like full of it. And then every time it was time to meet with us, she was like, oh, I'm gonna be out for work by 4 o'clock. I'll be there. Like you were at every home, every showing. And it was just like, oh, he's serious. Like he's absolutely not playing about this. So once we went through the pre-approval process together and so forth, I'm not sure if it was exactly prior to or somewhere in the middle of it, because we were kind of like talking about being engaged at that time. And I know somewhere in the middle of the process, you were just like, well, when I get off of work on Tuesday, I'm going to pick you up so we can go get rings. And I was just like, get who a ring? And you were just like, I'm going to get you a ring when we get off. We're about to get engaged so we can get married. And I was just like, this guy, like, I know. I was just like, you know what? I'm going with the flow along with this also because I've never seen a person like, he's been telling me the truth so far. So I'm just going to go with the flow of it. And my friends at the time was basically like, girl, go get your ring size. Go see what your ring size is. Like everybody was trying to rush me to the mall because I was like, I have no idea what my ring size is. And everybody was trying to rush me to the store, rush me to the mall and basically say like, girl, he is serious. He is serious. And the entire time I just was like, when I see him pull up and take me and we go to the jewelry store and this become real and I see him get on one knee, then that's when I would believe it. Cause I don't believe a word of anything because it's just still, everything was just happening. And it's not like you were being untruthful. It was just like, is this really happening? Like I hadn't met anybody in my life at that time that was just like, so consistent and so persistent on everything. And that's kind of how we got into our first property. Like once we bought our first property, we knew at that time that we were going to not stay there long. Like we knew that we were going to possibly just get our feet in the door, so we can try to renovate it to sell it quickly. So I don't know if you recall some of that, if you want to speak on it, but I know that was initially 100% our plan.
That was initially, we went in, boots hit the ground. We went in running. We was in there working all the time. Emily coming up with ideas. Next thing I know, she had somebody measuring to put a countertop and, redoing the kitchen, the floor. She the one that taught me how to tile. She was down the basement one day tiling the floor, and I'm sitting there looking at her. And next thing I know, she was teaching me how to tile the floor. I never tiled the floor a day in my life. So I started changing out the stuff in the ceiling. We did a complete 180.
Actually, even through like a paint party, like the same day that we closed on the property, like that weekend, it was like a Friday or something. So like all day Saturday, we had like a paint party where people came over and helped us paint. And then I think that we stayed at my apartment, because I still had my apartment at the time. And then we had you stay over at the property while new carpet was being delivered and being installed and so forth.
And let me add on that. Ebony picked out the whitest carpet, but something, our carpet, people couldn't believe how clean it was, and we had children. Like our carpet was white, but it stayed picture perfect clean. Like it was completely clean.
And we also had a huge bill for the carpet cleaners. They used to come in all the time. They weren't expensive, but they came frequently. So we made sure that at any given time that not only was it clean, because it was naturally clean, but it was white carpet. So we always had basically the carpet cleaning company on speed dial to come in to make sure everything stayed immaculate while we lived there. Because again, our focus was 100% that this was a starter home for us. And like I said, at that point, I was 21 when we purchased the home. And I believe you were 25 or 26 at the time. And we knew that we could afford more of a home, but we kind of were still a little like, let's be safe. Like this is our first property and we're just basically engaged at this point. Like we weren't married yet. We were just going all in. We both, at that point, we had completely moved from separate places, and it wasn't that we were afraid to move forward with each other. It's just that we had never combined, bills and anything at that time. So everything was just going to be like, how much is the phone bill going to be here? How much is the gas and electric going to be here? Like, how much will the cable be? And what will we need to get done and furniture and so forth? And again, our mindset was that we were going to completely almost renovate this property. So, at that time, we were super young, making a lot of money at that time. I think, at 21, we were just still doing really, really good for ourselves. Like you had your own career, I had my own career. I was working in the nursing field. And then at one point, I was even inspired by some of the mentoring that you were doing. And I kind of picked up an extra shift, working with children with special needs not far from our home. And we were like 21 years old and 25 years old doing like over $20,000 a month, but we were still super, super nervous. Like we were just kind of, I remember us sitting at the closing table and you had given me your Mervo class ring right before we had went out the door. And I was kind of like, what is this for? And you were just like, I just want you to have it. So I wore your Mervo class ring to our closing. And I remember the mortgage company had told us prior to, like a week or two before, they told us that our mortgage payment was going to be like $1,000. And I remember when we got to the table to sign, ended up being like $1,100. And that extra $100, like you looked at me and I looked at you and you were basically like, gave me the look like, are we doing it? And I was just like, let's do it. And then we basically started signing. But long story short, the reason why we rented that property and really put our time and dedication into it, and I actually tried to buy it back twice, after we sold it, because I actually loved that property. Like, it was a really, really good piece of property on a good piece of land. The kids always say that that was the funnest house that we've ever lived in. We used to just basically, while we did renovations, we pretty much just enjoyed ourselves. We planned our wedding while we was there. We had tons of events while we lived there. We were always having cookouts, having people over, having guests at the house. Um, Jerome is a big entertainer, which I am not. But we'll get to that piece a little later on. So Jerome was always really big on having friends over. And if you ever been to any of our events, then you know he caters to everyone. I mean, he wants to make sure
we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time.
You're going to have a great time. You're going to be well fed. You're going to have plenty of drinks there. You're going to have plenty of food available. I mean, all kinds of foods, not just hors d'oeuvres. I mean, you're going to be fed when you're here. Good music. And he's going to make sure that everybody is basically, make sure that they feel like they're at home. So that's basically what we did. We just like literally tried to make the best of it. We knew that we were going to be renovating. We did the kitchen. We did strip kitchen cabinets. Like you said, I was always laying tile. And that was my first time ever doing something like that. I kind of self-taught myself how to lay tile. And I remember, like you said, you came home and I had redone the whole kitchen floor. I had retiled the entire floor.
Yeah.
I retiled one of the bathroom floors, and I mean, I was just changing out all types of things to really get this home prepped and ready for, you know, the future, for us to not only enjoy it with our kids while we were there, but in that short amount of time, get it ready for resale.
We also, too, I wanted to talk about, we redid the driveway, and when we got the driveway done, we didn't do asphalt, we did concrete. So anybody that knows the difference between asphalt and concrete, we did that. We did the whole walkway up to the house. We even created a part from the driveway to the steps.
Yep. We added
so we,
walkway.
So we did a lot.
And we often sometimes even drive back past there to kind of see, because like I said, I tried to purchase that property back twice and got outbid by investors, other local investors in Baltimore, but I absolutely adored that property. So the long and short of things of how we got started in real estate is because when we purchased our first property, we basically used it as an investment property going in the door. Like, even though we live there, a lot of people don't understand, or they may not have the knowledge that basic FHA loans, you only are required to own or occupy the property for 1 year. And even at that time, me not being a real estate professional at the moment, you know, I was just all over it. Like, I've always been someone that's like big on getting information and educating myself. And I mean, at 21 years old, I was doing my research. So when I found out that we only, by law, I had to live in this house for 1 year, I was fair game. All I wanted to do was just make sure we fix it up, make sure we do any updates that we need, and get whatever funds that we needed to get out of it so we can quickly move on. And that property was actually in East Baltimore. And one day we came home from work and I noticed that a house next door to us, because we were basically in a duplex, the house next door to us had went on the market. And when I went on Zillow at that time to see how much that home was listed for, I immediately called you and was like, Jerome, we're listing. We're getting out of here. And as usual, any crazy idea I have, Jerome was fair game. He was like, okay, let's do it. So I feel like it was like a matter of weeks before we end up putting that house on the market, calling our other realtor back, the same realtor that helped us purchase the property. And when we put the house on the market and we sold it, we end up making about $100,000 off of that property from the renovations that we have done and so forth. And the market, and this was in 2005, so the market was just booming at that time. It was a huge seller's market. Obviously, many may know, not too far before the housing crash really came into fruition. But we definitely monopolized off of everything that was happening at that time, and used those funds in order to get our second property. And during that transition, once we got our second property, that is, we had that home built from the ground up in Baltimore County. So in the process of having that home built and going through that process, I mean, we were both, again, still so young And everybody was saying, like, I don't even know a person your age that has ever had a house built from the ground up before. And that was just an amazing experience for us, being able to like pick out all the fixtures, pick out where we wanted the lighting, pick out our land and so forth. But in the process of selling our other home, just to talk about some of the sacrifices that we made and that we had to speak with our children about while we were building that home and we sold our other home, we basically didn't have another home in between. So what we decided to do was get a rental property on a month-to-month basis. And I believe we stayed there maybe like 3 or 4 months, because it took about 6 months or so to build the house. And it was definitely a challenge for us. I mean, we had to, again, have another conversation with the children and just let them know, like, hey, and keep taking them across down the road to the other property so that they can see, like, this is going to be our new home. So with us being able to explain everything to them and let them know that this is just a stepping stone in our family's future and our family's success, we really didn't get a lot of flack from the children either. I mean, we pretty much, in that rental property for the 3 months that we lived there, I remember just having like a staging area, what you call it, where we had like just all of our boxes set. Like, I mean, the living room, I think, was just all storage. Like, we just literally use it as storage. It's just furniture and boxes and so forth. And everybody as a family just kind of teamed in together to just make it as comfortable as possible for us, and just looking for the future that we knew that, you know, brighter days in just a few more months was coming when our other house was done. So do you want to speak a little bit about some of those sacrifices during that time, in addition to some of the crazy ideas that we had to do in order to make those achievements? Because I know with us nowadays being real estate professionals, we have so many people that will ask us, how do we start out in real estate? And people just kind of see the end of the road. Nobody sees the sacrifice that we made, and nobody wants to be uncomfortable. And we just say all of that to say that it was a plenty of times throughout, you know, this whole partnership, throughout, you know, building our businesses and so forth, that we were uncomfortable and our kids were uncomfortable. And we would just come up with all kind of creative ways to make sure that we were making the best out of it. Like, sometimes we would just go get a hotel for a weekend and just take them out to swim. I know at one point the entire family got their fishing license, and we would go out to the water and just fish sometimes early in the morning and make a day out of that, and just kind of make it like anything that we could to not seem like now we're all crammed in this home. We just sold our other house, and now, you know, we have boxes piled from the floor to the ceiling in the living room. And just kind of getting everybody on board and those ultimate sacrifices that we had to make in order to grow our business.
I mean, you pretty much hit it on the head. The sacrifices to do that move, it was just, we had to make sure everybody was on board, everybody was comfortable. And like you said, we would do things like go out for the weekend, stay at a hotel, go to amusement parks, you know, things like that, to sit there and keep us, you know, keep the children still active and things like that, because we know we was in tight quarters, you know, at the rental property. So, I mean, we did what we had to do. I even remember that we moved boxes out of that living room, and we had like a Super Bowl party. It was just like 3 people, but we, you know, we had a Super Bowl party there, and you know, we was watching, and everybody knew that wasn't our situation. It's not like,
and shout out to all our friends that came to that Super Bowl party. You're actually crazy for coming to sit on boxes. I think we had like maybe like a 75-inch TV that we pulled from out the back, set that on some boxes, like ordered all of these hot wings and so forth. So anybody that even attended that party, clearly you're just as crazy as we are, because I can't believe that in those 3 months we attempted to have events and everything. Like, we just tried to keep everything as normal as possible. But we actually played charades that night. I mean, we had an amazing time, and it was, if we had, you know, a fly on the wall to take pictures that day, it was boxes taped up all around us, and we were just having an amazing time in there. So that's just some of the things that we did to try to, you know, pass the time and just kind of keep everybody motivated that it was better days coming ahead, and that we did have a plan, and not that, you know, we were just living here because, you know, something happened and we lost the house. Like, in order to get to that next step, it just always was some kind of sacrifice that we had to make. And it's hard nowadays asking people to make similar sacrifices because, again, everyone just sees the end of the road. So once we got into the second property, everybody just was like, oh my goodness, you guys, just built this $500,000 home. I can't believe it. And all we were thinking was like, look, we just came out of sleeping in my boxes, all my clothes on the floor. Like, we didn't want to celebrate, the end game. We had just been through a lot those 3 months, and we tried to make the best of it. And I think we did a really, really good job at doing that. But sometimes at that point, it just always kind of bothered us a little bit when nobody really saw all that we went through, to make that achievement, because it wasn't easy, and especially doing that transition with children. Our jobs work, like you said, we had sometimes even the kids that you were mentoring was there. I mean, we were just crammed into this much smaller townhome that we had ever lived in. I mean, obviously having one bathroom, the children were absolutely going crazy. That was probably the worst experience for them. And I know sometimes we try to bring them back down to earth, like, plenty of people have one bathroom. But coming from a home that they had, more than one bathroom, and then knowing at the other house that we were going to have like 5 bathrooms, they just were like, please, 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 we cannot, all of our kids are athletes and they constantly, are eating and growing, and everybody, I think the hardest thing during that time was probably the one bathroom. Other than that, everybody pretty much coped very well with the transition, getting into our second property. So that was just a great experience for us all together, just to see like, and honestly, it made us appreciate a lot more when we did the work ourselves. So when we started doing some of that work ourselves and kind of learning and training, and I even remember some of our neighbors in the first house, when they saw that we were a young couple and we were out there, boots on the ground doing everything, and they saw us trimming the hedges and putting flower beds in and putting mulch down. I remember neighbors were like all in. They gathered around us and basically said, anything you need, because I don't think we had a lawnmower at that time. We barely had a screwdriver, and like we had basic toolkits and things. And everybody kind of pitched in and was like, whatever you need, we'll definitely be there to assist you guys. We were just a young couple. I mean, from day one, we were just a super young couple on the move. Like, we just didn't focus on anything that anybody else was doing. We were just super focused on whatever we set our mind to. We just were achieving it back to back to back. Like, we stuck to the plan. Whatever we discussed, if anything that needed any adjustments on the plan, we would go speak to each other about it and kind of let the kids know, like, hey, this is what the next thing that we need to do in line. And it just felt like to us, as long as everybody was on board, then we can almost achieve anything together. And that's basically what we attempted to do.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. You got to be on board with your partner. So y'all got to come up with a plan. Ebony was famous for doing 5-year plans. So it's like on top of, we're doing this, she already got the idea for the next thing. So we're never stopping. We're constantly sitting there, pushing ourselves to do more. It's like excellence, like, okay, we did this, let's do something else. And Ebony's been big on that. And it's definitely we've been winning off.